save local journalism. The Black Press is an essential service. Welcome to another National Newspaper Publishers Association and the Black Press of America's live broadcast where we talk to great publishers of the Black Press. Today, we have Fran Farah of the County News. North Carolina will receive $9.3 million from FEMA's Emergency Food and Shelter Program to assist nonprofits that are helping residents who are experiencing hunger and homelessness. Well, where can you read that? You can read that in the County News, which covers at least 5 counties in North Carolina. We also have Gene Boone of the Richmond Free Press. The mission of the independent prize-winning Richmond Free Press is to empower its readers by contributing to the balance of news reporting and commentary in the Richmond area, and simultaneously to educate its readers about important issues touching their lives and to motivate them to be fully heard on these issues. Joining us also from the nation's capital is Denise Rolock Barnes of the Washington Informer. The Washington Informer was founded in 1964 by Dr. Calvin Rolock in order to highlight positive images of African Americans. We continue to only do positive news, Denise says, as we strive to educate, empower, and inform. And there are also times when the boss has to be summoned. And today is that day. Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr., who was born with activism in his blood. He's our president and CEO. He's his grandfather, John Chavis, was the first Black graduate from Princeton University. He set up an underground school for African Americans who were forbidden to learn to read and write. Dr. Chavis became active in civil rights at the young age of 13 when he attempted to integrate the all-white library in his hometown. Although he was ultimately unable to check out any books, he was the first African American to obtain a library card and to attempt to borrow books. We know Chavis's history of serving as a youth coordinator with the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, his work with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and being a part of that famed Wilmington 10. Well, he's our president and CEO of the Black Press. So we welcome publishers and you, Dr. Chavis. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be joined with 3 of our outstanding publishers. And I just want to give a shout out to all of our sister publishers in the NNPA. When people talk about the viability or the sustainability of the Black Press of America in 2020, I'm so proud that Black women are heading a lot of our papers throughout the country. And certainly looking forward to hearing from our publishers on this program. I'm here just to be a support voice today, because I really want to hear from them. And I know all around the country, people are going to pose questions to this set of distinguished publishers.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move forward, we want to clarify something from a previous stream with the publishers. We talked about advertising, and one of the things that was brought up is a viewer was asking, would they take ads from President Trump? And one of the things that we talked about was, if you take from the Democrats, you have to take from the Republicans and vice versa. Well, Freedom Forum Institute cleared that up. They sent this along. Some states passed a right of reply statutes to require newspapers that criticize candidates to give those candidates spaces to respond. And Miami Herald Publishing Company Supreme Court ruling in 1974 stated that such statutes violate First Amendment because the government cannot compel a newspaper to publish information. A responsible press is undoubtedly a desirable goal, the court said, but press responsibility is not mandated by the Constitution, and like many other virtues, it cannot be legislated. So just to clear that up, it's still up to our publishers if they want to take advertisement.
Absolutely. And of course, the NNPA, we are 501c6. We're nonpartisan. I believe that some of our publishers are Democrats, some of our publishers are Republicans, some of our publishers are independent, and some of our publishers are making up their mind. That's fine. I think that we have to practice ourselves freedom of speech, freedom of press. Since 1827, this is the 193rd year of the Black Press of America. So I'm very proud of the Black Press, and I know there are a few people still trying to throw stones at the Black Press, but I can assure you that the Black Press in 2020 is resilient. it is surviving, but more than surviving. In a lot of places, we are continuing to thrive. And of course, in those places where we are facing challenges, it's our responsibility to try to help bring advertising dollars, to try to help bring sponsorship dollars, and try to also promote the innovation of the Black press of America. These things are not mutually exclusive. And I think sometimes because of social media, because of the digital age, there may be the tendency to try to discount the importance and the value of the Black print press. So we're here today to affirm not only its importance, but its critical necessity for the future of Black America, that you have a strong Black press, like we need a strong Black church, like we need strong HBCUs. This is not the time for us to even think about trying to dismantle some of our essential institutions, the Black press, the Black church, and Black colleges.
Well, with those words from a North Carolina native, we're gonna go down to North Carolina. Fran Farah, as she told me how to pronounce that, like Farrah Fawcett Majors, but she's only prettier than Farrah Fawcett Majors. The County News. Fran, tell us, how have the County News been able to get through this pandemic? We know it's not over yet. We know a lot of states have lifted restrictions, but what's been going on down there?
Well, Stacy, a lot. One of the funny things I'll share with you before I tell what's been going on and how we've made it. Many people have come up to me because I live in Charlotte and my office is in Statesville. You're not going to work, are you? And my comment is, yes, I publish a newspaper. I'm the publisher. I have to go to work. But they never asked the Observer, the Hickory Daily Record, or any other, newspaper, Winston-Salem Journal, about that. And to the point of the importance of the Black press, many people would not get the news that we have if it was not for the Black press. They get the daily TV from Spectrum and SOC and all those, but we've made it, Stacy, because after 29 years, I bought my paper 12 years ago, and I was a big girl. I bought the building and the business. And of course, 2010, you know what happened. So this big girl had to give the building back and move 2 blocks up the street from 7 rooms to 2. That adjustment was great, but God has a way of making things happen. And we were able to survive. Yes, we didn't have the 7 rooms, but we never missed a week. One of the things that's helped us, and that helps now during this time, COVID-19 is no joke. Many people have lost a lot of things. We formed partnerships with churches, with businesses, and I'll just have to say, thank you, Jesus, hallelujah, all the great things that you can say to God. We've not lost any customers. We haven't gained any new ones, which of course we won't, not locally, but we've not lost one local customer. Thank God, like Dr. Chavis mentioned earlier, being part of a large, NNPA, an organization that fights for us, a team that sells for us, they too sell contracts. And being part of recipient of that plus not losing local. I've got a car dealership in Statesville that's been doing business with us every week for 13 years. Well, since 2013, I'm sorry. And they're on one of their other companies. That's a Chevrolet, Ford. It's not a big ad, but they don't miss a week. And they pay every month. We don't have like a 90-day backup. So it's stuff like that. That's those church partnerships. I give the churches a discount. So they pay, whether they have people in church or not. That's what kept us there. Because we put the news out there.
Well, it's certainly great to hear. We're going to come back to you, Fran, for more great information that's coming out of North Carolina. We're going to stay in the South, but and go to Richmond to Gene Boone. Right. It's really a pleasure to have you, Gene Boone. Tell us how things have been going in Richmond with your newspaper, and how have you been able to survive to this point?
Well, with prayer and also tightening our belt. We own our business. We own our building, so and we have tenants. So that helps with the overall head of it certainly helps. But in terms of the newspaper itself, we've never missed an edition. The founder of the Free Press, my husband Ray Boone, who I think is an icon, was an icon for the Black press, often said, if we miss an edition, it's all over. And that's all I could hear when this pandemic began to raise its ugly head. We cannot miss an edition. We have the most loyal staff of reporters and photographers that anyone would ever want. And they kept the faith, they kept the news going. And while we are a newspaper of general circulation and we're controlled circulation, which means we're free, we had to cut back on our circulation because a lot of the businesses to which we delivered were closed. But we made up for it with boxes on the street that continued to have papers placed in them by our delivery service. And as such, we find that people have been picking up, several copies and then distributing it to their neighbors. So we're an essential business as far as the government is concerned. And as far as our readers are concerned, we are definitely essential. And again, we've not missed a beat. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a great thing. We often, when we do these, we often get a lot of comments from viewers, and even those who work for the Black press. John Muller, the Washington Informer contributor, he's saying hello, Denise, and thanks for the broadcast and the leadership of the Black press and NMPA. William McNair says thank you to all the courageous publishers and editors of Black press that keeps our community informed of very vital information. We also have Rich Davis. We need more Black people to infiltrate mainstream media so that we can control our own narrative. How do we do that? This president needs to be curbed in the media. Also, sites like QAnon damage our freedom of speech and press. They make a mockery of our First Amendment rights. How do we, within the Constitution, eradicate these types of sites? So I'm gonna go to Denise and Dr. Chavis in that order. Denise?
Thank you, Stacey, for the opportunity to be here and to be with my great fellow women publishers. I think this is a story that NMPA really needs to tell, and I hope to work with Dr. Chavis and some of the others to really talk about the huge number of women publishers that there are in the Black press. I get really frustrated when I read, the trade magazines that talk about what difference do women publishers make and where they are, or more than not where they are not, and the lack of them, which means that they don't even look sideways at the Black press. But we have a great story to tell, and it's a long legacy of women publishers that I think we all should be proud of. Also want to give a shout out to John, because, John Muller is, I call him Frederick Douglass reincarnate, because he really follows Frederick Douglass and really shares, and it is really frustrated sometimes because Black America, he feels, is not as, I guess we don't honor Douglass like we should. And as a publisher, we have so many, but I think in some ways he's correct. I don't know if I can answer Rich's question about infiltration of the mainstream media. All I can say, and I don't know if that's what you wanted me to do, but I will say that if it were not for the Black press, where so many in what he's calling mainstream media had their roots, it's where they started. It's where they got that first taste of journalism, got those first experiences working with editors who were tough, and who didn't give them an opportunity to really be apprentices, but taught them how to be professionals in the trade. and then went on to the media. So that's essentially what we've done. Unfortunately, now that media has been laying off people by the thousands. And in some respects, some of us are the benefactors of that, because a lot of those media folks, those journalists, are coming back home, and we welcome them with open arms. And there's this fallacy, even though we are struggling, we've always struggled, but there's this fallacy that we can't pay them. And that's a fallacy, because in some respects, we may not be able to compete dollar for dollar, but we can compete with experience and exposure and some dollars. So I think the Black press is competitive, despite what others might want to say. And this COVID has really taught us how strong we are. Like I said, with Ms. Boone talking about what her husband, who I used to love to talk to, Ray Boone, who told her, if you miss an issue, it's all over. I mean, none of us want to miss an issue. And right, we have to do what was required, which is to reduce our press runs, because people aren't out in the streets to pick up our newspapers like we would like. But we've strengthened our websites. We're doing much more on social media. But the print is our baby, and we're taking care of it as well as we can. And I commend Fran as well, because I know, with 5 counties and she's still publishing, I need to bow down to her because, it just shows the strength of the Black press.
And it shows the strength of you Black women publishers. Dr. Chavis, I know you want to weigh in, but I want to add something to that question, Dr. Chavis. A free press is one of the few things specifically cited in the Constitution. However, the Black press is often constrained, muted, or censored. How does today's political environment impact the Black press and the community it serves?
Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to give short answers to your long question. First, I just want to say to the legacy of Ray Boone, well, we dare not forget he was not only an icon, a freedom fighter. I would never drive through Richmond without stopping in Richmond to see Ray Boone during the height of the Civil Rights Movement. So, Ms. Boone, thank you for keeping that legacy alive, and thank you for keeping the Richmond Free Press free. And of course, Calvin Rolock was the first person I ever heard use the term Black Power, in Washington, D.C. Years ago. And Denise, you're doing a great job keeping the legacy of Calvin Rolock alive with the Washington Informer.
Thank you.
And Fran is, what she also should have told you, that Western North Carolina, where she is, that's also a strong hotbed of a lot of white supremacy. And so to dare to have a Black newspaper surrounded in those counties that are known for Ku Klux Klan, are known for Nazism, they're known for all kinds of things that repress Black people, hats off. But I think the questioner who asked the first question had part of the answer in his question. We have to control our own narrative. We have to defend and define our own narrative. We're just not a reactionary press. We just don't react to what white people do. We have to discern. We say we're the voice of Black America. So we have to listen to what is going on in our community, and then we have to translate the community's voice into our voice and distribute our voice. And when I first came back to the NMPA in 2014, we had around 208, 205, at least member affiliates. Everybody wasn't fully, all dues paying at the time. But I'm proud to say today we have 230 African-American owned newspapers and media companies that are part of the affiliate infrastructure of the NMPA, and we're growing. And even ebony.com, which is now doesn't print, they're digital, but they're part of the NMPA family. And when I listened to a recent panel that the NAACP had, I was saying, well, those people speaking, they should be part of the NMPA because they need to learn more about the Black press. A lot of times people speak about things that they don't have an in-depth knowledge about. And I think that I would invite all of the listeners not only to study the history of the black press, the evolution of the black press, but its mission. And the black press is more important in 2020 than it was in 1827, because
Yeah.
we're in a life and death struggle, not only around the coronavirus, but we're in a life and death struggle around police brutality. We're in a life and death struggle around the infrastructure, the economic well-being, the widening wealth gap in America. And certainly this virus is going to exacerbate those disparities. And everybody's talking about the pre-existing health disparities that black people face before the coronavirus. And all those are true. But, you know, I think that sometimes when issues are reported is that we see the glass half full or we see the glass half empty. It's our perspective. And one of the strengths of the black press of America is the perspective that it brings to all of the issues, no matter what they are. Now that we're
Yeah.
doing these video streams, Stacey, I want to thank you and Norman Rich, because I think people get a chance to hear from our publishers, get to hear from the black press and the vitality. I agree with Denise. We need to report about our women publishers. We also need to report about the vitality of the black press, the vitality of HBCUs, the vitality of the black church. The mainstream media, they always report on the negative, never accentuate the positive. I had a reporter from the New York Times call me and said, do we still need the black press? And I said, well, why would you even ask me that question? He said, well, my editor wants to. I said, well, your editor, you know, needs to go back to school, because the black press enriches the so-called white press or the so-called mainstream press. And I think that if anything, we should be using this epidemic, this pandemic, to try to maneuver not only through it so we can make it through, but we have to make sure that the community that we serve also makes it through. I'm proud that the NNPA was the first publications to announce a state of emergency on the coronavirus, because a lot of black folks were getting misinformation. There was this terrible myth on social media that black people, because of melanin in our skin, could not get the virus. Totally false, totally untrue. You know, and so a lot of times we wind up getting hurt, or sometimes we hurt ourselves because of misinformation and the lack of truth. That's why I'm very proud of the black press today, and we want to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, and thanks, Dr. Chavis, of course. I want the publishers to discuss this amongst each other out loud so everyone can hear, and that includes you, Fran. But so we had an opinion editorial run over the weekend by Paris Denard of the Republican National Committee, and it was even picked up by Fox News. They did cite the black press for it, but it also, more importantly, it sparked a really heated conversation in our community, our readers, who are really concerned when we do run articles from the Republican side, and certainly from someone like Paris Denard, an African American who will defend Trump till death. Can you talk about what your papers are doing, and talk about that situation where we are as the black press, while we don't necessarily have to pick a side, but when we see certain things, don't we have to call it out? And we can start with you, Fran, but I want the publishers to discuss this openly, and Dr. Chavis, of course, among yourselves. I mean, out loud.
Well, I look at it like this. First of all, let's be clear. There's some very old black people in the world. Many of them remain Republican. Some have changed. Republicans are the ones that freed us to vote. My mother was a Republican. She was supported by Jesse Helms. So I'm saying all that to say this. My paper needs money. I have many white folk, Caucasians, whatever you want to call them, buy my paper. I have 5 counties, 3 of them are kind of heavily, Republican based. They want to read my paper, I want them to be able to buy it. They want to put their ad in my paper, I'm going to take it. I have press run bill every week. I have people to pay every week. So, and I don't know I do know several black Republicans today in Charlotte. I know several in other cities. I take their ads. for them looking for a vote. It's up to our readership. So I looked at it like, this is a business. This is a business that we're running. Our doors have to stay open and our minds have to stay open, because I promise you, every Democrat's not on our side either. You have to look at it like that. So I don't want to take up all the time, but that's why I run Republicans' ads. I have Republican readers, and I want them to be able to see the truth about Black people. And the only place they're going to see that is in the county news and other, my sister and brother papers across the United States.
Yeah. Jean, Denise, you want to weigh in?
Well, I'll just say that, Washington, D.C. is a Democratic city. Majority voters here are Democrats. And our big issue in the District of Columbia is voting rights anyway. We have a member of Congress who doesn't have a vote. And we don't have anyone in the Senate. We've got shadow senators, and folks that, we're a territory and we're treated as such. And so, individuals that run for national offices often ignore the district. And the other point I wanted to make, just as relates to party affiliation, we have tried for many years to have on our editorial or our commentary pages a diverse points of view. And it's always frustrating to me when it seems as though there are a handful of Republicans who seem to get the spotlight most of the time. Armstrong Williams, Raynard Jackson, now Paris Denard. We tried to get Black women Republicans to contribute articles to the Informer, but there only seem to be like 5 voices that come out of the party. So, we can't fix that. And when it comes to the issue of advertising, we haven't had that issue. We haven't been confronted by it. If there is a Republican in the District of Columbia that's running for office, we certainly wouldn't exclude their advertising. But we do have a editorial point of view, and we will maintain that regardless of who decides to spend money with us. So, I don't know I missed the conversation this weekend with Paris Denard, and so I would have liked to have heard that so I could comment directly, but I didn't hear it.
Yeah, Jean Boone, your thoughts?
Sure. I guess several thoughts were going through my mind as I listened to my fellow publishers. One of the things that it has been the principle in the Free Press since its inception in 1992. We're pretty young as the Black press goes, but one of the things that we say, and that I keep going back to our founder, my husband, my late husband, he often said this: if you're aiming for the bottom line, you're aiming too low. And we've never pandered to anyone. We've had local issues where, for example, the development of a downtown area was headed up by the CEO of Dominion Energy, which arguably is our largest advertiser, our most faithful advertiser. The CEO is a good friend of the Free Press, but we were never editorially positive about the development for a variety of reasons, which are local and don't need to be delved into at this point. But we just simply tried to be truth tellers. And we figure if we're truth tellers, the truth will prevail. The other thing is we don't have a lot of Republican and Democrats vying for space in our Free Press. Would that they were. I think that as an example, I think after Joe Biden's missteps a few few days ago that he really has the opportunity, his campaign has the opportunity to speak to Black people through the Black press from now until election day, period. End of sentence, full stop. Rod, as far as I am concerned, Joe Biden never placed advertising in any Black newspaper. I may be wrong, and I would love to be corrected. We certainly haven't seen it. And yet, the Democrats expect our vote. And, given that Trump is the president that we would vote against, of course, we're going to vote him out of office. That is paramount. But at the same time, the Democrats cannot just walk away with our vote and expect to give nothing in return, period.
So Dr. Chavis, is there a such thing as selling out because we're placing an ad for maybe Donald Trump or running a Paris Denard column?
No. Well, again, the NMPA is nonpartisan. But first of all, we just don't. You just can't place anything in our papers, or else we won't send it out. I think what Sister Boone said, if it's something truthful, and you pay the advertising rates of the publishers, you can get it in. But if something so far-fetched away from the truth, no matter how much money you have, we're not going to publish it because truth to us is very important. Now, let's just go back to a couple of things. We have been in touch with the Biden campaign, and I guess I can say this on this program. The Biden campaign is making a commitment to advertise in the Black press between now and November. My message back to them was, don't wait till September and October. If you're going to advertise in the Black press, you need to start doing it now. The Republicans, the RNC, as well as the DNC, have also been in touch with the NMPA about advertising. The DCCC has placed some small ads. That's the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And we're waiting to see what the Democratic Senatorial Committee is going to do. There are all these different, the Democratic Governors Association, there are different parts of political spending. And of course, my job is to make sure that they be inclusive in their spending, particularly to include Black press and all the major markets. The sisters who are on this panel, the publishers, you're in major markets. You're in major voting markets. Virginia, North Carolina, the Washington, Virginia, Maryland area. These are key battleground places. We also have to make sure that we're not undercounted in the census. So all of you should be getting some census ads also from the NMPA. The thing is that the outlook, I predict, and I'm certainly going to try to make this prediction come true over the next few months. I think the Black press has a sustainable future. And we have to take advantage of the opportunities that are out there, not only for grants or for government stimulus programs. And some of our publishers have gotten some of the stimulus response. I know Facebook had a major grant program that a lot of our publishers took advantage of, Google also, and many others. I think the value of the Black press is on the incline, not the decline. That's the message. And I think what we have to do is position ourselves in the marketplace, continue to print our newspapers, and continue to take the wealth of that content that's in print and also distribute that content on multiple platforms. It does not take away from the print. In fact, it helps sustain the print when you take the content and put it on all of the platforms that are available. Because right now, most African Americans, they also get a lot of their information on these things, these phones, cell phones, devices that they call them, because it's more than a telephone now. People actually, the Oscars last year gave an Oscar out to somebody who did a movie just using a cell phone. So technology is changing things, but the commitment and the mission of the Black press remains. And I think, if anything, the coronavirus is teaching us how important it is, Stacey, that we get that truth out in a timely fashion, and that we be consistent in our truth telling. You know, the last thing that Black America needs from the Black press is silence about what's going on. We have to call out wherever the injustice is. We have to call out where the underhandedness is. And I would say to the Democratic Party, don't take the Black vote for granted. Don't take the Black press for granted. Don't take the Black community for granted. While most Black folks are Democrat, it's going to be a turnout question. And I would say also, if the Republicans think that all they have to do is print up some T-shirts and say, you ain't Black. If that's your strategy to get out Black votes for the Republicans, I would have them to rethink that strategy. I think Black people are much more discerning, much more intelligent, and much more observant of what is going on in terms of the impact of the quality of life of our community. But I do think there's an opportunity for the RNC as well as the DNC, not only an opportunity, I would say a responsibility to advertise in the Black press.
Yeah, again, for those just joining us, we are just past the bottom of the hour. You are watching live the National Newspaper Publishers Association. We're celebrating our 80th anniversary this year and the 193rd anniversary of the Black press in America. Major milestones, and thanks in large part due to these wonderful publishers that you are seeing today. We have so many comments. We love to get to them all, but I do want to give the publishers a chance to talk about the Black publishers versus mainstream publications that report on Black issues. We know that a few days ago there was a forum held by the NAACP about Black media. Can you talk about that, publishers, the importance of getting your news directly from the source or from Black reporters who work for mainstream? And we can start with Fran.
Well, I like the part when you said we need to get our own news, because oftentimes, well, first of all, you can't tell if it's given to you correctly or incorrectly, so that you can be looked at as being wrong and not knowing. So I think we need to have our own reporters, even if they're contract, to do specific assignments for what we want them for. And I think that's what our communities look to us for. They want to see our side of the story. They want to hear, did you talk to Mrs. Jones about how she felt when her son was killed? Or, we need our own stories and not follow them up. We were glad to have the young man from this past issue. They were not, neither of the young Black people that were killed were from North Carolina, but you have to do your own investigation and not just copy what the general population has. We have to first remember too, like I think you may have said earlier, Stacey, all of our people listen to the TV, but they're getting their news from us. And oftentimes they will refer you to the daily or the weekly, And so we have to be stewards of that. We have to have people assigned or do it ourselves. I do a lot of stories myself because I pay a lot of people. So that's important to me, that we do our own.
Yeah, Gene Boone, Richmond, your thoughts on that?
Yes, we are not followers. The daily paper often uses the free press as a tip sheet, but we're often out with local stories before they are, and with greater credibility. I'm often told, if I really want to know what's going on in Richmond, I need to read the free press. And that's the way it should be. The quality of writing, the quality of our layout makes it an attractive newspaper to all people. we are not just a newspaper for Black people, but we are targeted to Black and brown people. And we find that our readership is across the board. When we started the Free Press in 1992, the city was predominantly Black. Today, it is not. It's probably 99% Black, but there is a larger white public population that has moved into the city. And quite honestly, we feature people who are not Black and brown in stories or in features such as Personality of the Week. If they're doing something if anyone is doing something that is noteworthy and can add to the quality of life in Richmond, we feature them. And we tell their story because it can affect our life. And, that's been our formula, not to be exclusive, but to be inclusive and to do it with quality. Good. Often, as I said, I quote my husband a lot, but he's the founder, and he developed the recipe. So he would often say, and Hazel Trice Edney, who works with the NNPA, will tell you, because he was one of her first editors, kill the dull. We have to have exciting writing that will attract the millennials, as well as the boomers, as well as anybody else who's out there who wants to read and know about what's going on in our community. We tend to focus primarily on local news, though not at the exclusion of national news, but we have to have a focus, and that's our focus. The other thing is we do not cover crime in the way that it might have been done in, 30, 40 years ago, where, there was always a blood story on the front page. We don't do that at all. If we cover that kind of story, it is from a sociological perspective. It is what are the disparities that caused a heinous crime, but not one that is a run-of-the-mill crime story. That's just not who we are.
Yeah, we got Rich Davis says, my loyalty is to my people first. Regina Boone says, yes, we have our own voices. We do not need to ask for handouts from others. So I want to go to you, Denise. With that same question, the other day, as we discussed, the NAACP had a forum with Black reporters, but how important is it to get the news directly from the Black press?
Well, I think it's extremely important, but I want to tell Ms. Boone, I'm appreciating all of these quotes from your husband. And so at our staff meeting, my folks are going to hear Kill the Dull on Thursday. So thank you. But yeah, it's extremely important. I mean, one of the things, I go back to the point that I made before. And I know it was critical here, particularly in Washington, D.C. My dad really fought hard to help to open the doors at some of the TV stations, the newspapers, what have you, for African Americans who were trying to pursue careers in journalism here in local media. And it's important to have them there because you want people in the room who can set those editors straight, who can set those other reporters straight when it comes to reporting on our community. Because a lot of times, and it's correct, they're reporting from a distance and they don't know what we know about our own communities. And so I think having Black people in those newsrooms, and hopefully as editors and assignment editors, is beneficial and critical to our community. So for those who know their job well, and really want to represent, we're proud of them, and we want them to continue. We want to continue to keep those doors open for them. One, because we can't hire them all. But on the other side, when you look at what we do as Black publishers, I mean, they have to fight over, that story, whether they're going to get that what they think is a critical story on A1, or whether, it's how the Congressional Black Caucus events every year always ended up in the style section. These are Congress people who are making major legislative decisions that impact not only the lives of Black people, but all people across this country, but yet they're relegated to style. But in our newspapers, when we have to fill up 20, 24, 36, 48 pages, maybe even more a week, and every single story, for the most part, is focused on our community, whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's business, religion, health, technology, you name it. We find stories and we report those stories about the people in our community who are making a difference. Those, as one of your former guests from the Norfolk, the New Journal and Guide in Norfolk, I mean, that story about Hidden Figures came out of her publication. And so if it were not for the Black press, a lot of those individuals who are really making a difference in this country, those stories wouldn't be written about. Those stories wouldn't get out. But I do believe that, and I tell my staff this all the time, they're snipping at our heels because, white newspapers realize that, in certain markets where you have a predominantly Black population that's hungry for news, they're going to try to give you at least those 2 or 3 stories that are going to go deeper, with more, visuals and all this other stuff that they can provide, the links online, all of that. I mean, I would give the New York Times a real, not necessarily the Times, but the reporter that did the 1619 project. I mean, some may want to criticize how it was done, but it was a phenomenal project. Mm-hmm. And so, I praise her for being able to knock that door down, as I can imagine the fight she had to try to convince them why it was even important to do it. Stacey, you've been doing a whole series on women's suffrage in conjunction with an organization called Unerased. I mean, we're about to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. Black women, particularly Black women publishers and Black women who wrote for Black newspapers, were intimately involved in that struggle, have been erased from the history. And thanks to you, we're bringing those individuals back to light. So that's why, that's what we do. That's why we think it's so important. And 100 years or 50 years from now, when COVID has come and gone, and they want to know how the Black press made it through, they're going to have to go back to these videos and look at those stories, and then find our individual newspapers in our markets to see, how did they survive this after we survived so many other things since 1827? Think about it. The first Black newspaper was founded almost 50 years before slavery was abolished. And it was founded by 2 men, a preacher and one of the first graduates of, was it Harvard, or I forget what school, but these were learned men, who felt as though, no one could plead our cause for us but us. And so the legacy continues. And
I think we lost Denise here, but Dr. Chavis, you obviously was very much involved in the civil rights movement. We're hearing some feedback, unfortunately, but Dr. Chavis, I want you to address the importance of the Black press then and now.
All right. I think can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know we're having a little technical difficulty. Well, I think that just following up what Denise was just saying, that the evolution of the Black press, one can analyze and understand the progress that Black America has made since 1827. It's not only been reported on, but documented. One of my laments is that we need more books written about the Black press. So, Sister Boone, we need a book about Ray Boone.
We need accurate books written
Yes.
about the Black press, because there
Yes.
have been books written about the Black press, but they have often been incorrect.
That's correct.
And yes, you know that. And that was,
Yes.
again, that was one of Ray's, you know, he found that very, very troublesome.
Exactly.
Because
Well, one of the things I'm contemplating now, I have to get my board to approve. I want the NMPA to become a publishing house. I think we need to be publishing books about the Black press. We need to be publishing books about the Richmond Free Press. We need to be publishing books about the Washington Informer, about the County News, about the Afro, about the Chicago Defender. Because unfortunately, a lot of these books have been written about Black people, have been written about the Black press. Even the books about the civil rights movement are not being written by Black people.
exactly.
You know?
Yes.
And so when we talk about protecting our narrative, we not only have to make sure that we write that narrative, that the narrative is accurate, but we also have to preserve that narrative. We have to distribute that narrative. We have to pass that narrative on to the next generation. It's like passing on a baton. You know, we haven't run the race all this far to meet our young people, to meet the millennials and say, oh, we have nothing to pass to you. We have to pass it to them. It's an invaluable legacy. I'm in touch with our brothers and sisters in South Africa right now. You'd be surprised. There are young people that were born now post Mandela. They've heard about Nelson Mandela, but they really don't know about what happened in Robbins Island. They don't know the struggle when the ANC was banned. Like a lot of us don't know that NAACP was banned in Mississippi, was banned in Alabama. You could be arrested for having a card, being a card-carrying member of the NAACP. That's why I was so proud when my parents, when I was 12 years old, I thought I was grown. I got my NAACP card, and Lord have mercy, I helped change the world ever since then. So yeah. I think the legacy of the Black press is so important, and it's our responsibility to ensure that that legacy is not only passed on, but taken up and moved to higher heights. Each generation, has a responsibility not only to continue to struggle, but to struggle in a way that we win. We need victories. We need to overcome these difficulties. We don't need to just to cite constantly all the disparities. The question is, what are we going to do about these disparities? And what can we put in place of the disparities that's sustainable for our businesses, that's sustainable for our families, that's sustainable for our communities? And that's the charge of the Black press today.
Yeah, one of the things that we're doing, Dr. Chavis did form the Coronavirus Resource Center, the Black Press's Coronavirus Resource Center. And one of the things that we are doing this coming Thursday at 1 o'clock, we're going to have 4 African-American doctors discuss the coronavirus and its impact in a lot of different ways that really haven't been discussed, as the birth of new babies during the pandemic. And we know that Black women have struggled with the mortality rate, infant mortality rate. So we're going to have that discussion on Thursday.
What time, Stacey? What time?
1 o'clock on Thursday, right here, same channel. The other thing is that the Black press, Dr. Chavis talked so eloquently about the legacy of the Black press. Part of that legacy is to stand up for what's right and stand up for things that others won't stand up for. And one of those things, I see Sasha Hampton, a huge advocate for Bill Cosby, has checked in with us, and she started a petition. Now, we've written a lot about that, and I know that Fran has an editorial about the potential release of Bill Cosby because of COVID. Just wanted to get the publishers in general take on not just Bill Cosby, but other things that we have taken a stand on.
Well, I start again.
Oh, Fran.
I did, Stacey, because I just think, number one, it should never been there. That's the first case. And the piece that I wrote is because of all the history, not just that, but he's made to look bad, and he did some bad things, but the ladies were clearly not ladies. They were ladies of the night to me. And that's the way the story reads. But not just that, we need to write about these articles when police brutality is truly that. Jonathan Farrell and Charlotte should never have been shot 13 times. When my father taught me how to use a gun, he said it only takes one bullet. And so that's not just overkill, that's prejudiced overkill. If we don't write these stories and confront these police commissioners, they'll never change. But when we do write these stories, then that's when we get some action. That's when it does go on the TV, and that's when we do march. But we have to speak up. It's our story. That's what we have to do.
Yeah. Denise wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, I just want from a local perspective, and it goes back to not only this health crisis that we're facing, because it's uncovered some things for some people that many of us already know about. I mean, our newspaper is located in an area in Washington, D.C. that has the highest number of, not the highest number of people with the virus, but the highest number of deaths in our community. And right across the border in Southern Maryland is another hotspot which is predominantly Black Prince George's County, which is another hotspot in the state of Maryland with the virus. And one of the things that we've been struggling with right here in this community is the fact that if you look at the south and the eastern parts of the District of Columbia, which is a very small, jurisdiction, but we've had the closure of 4 hospitals in the past, I'd say 5 or 6 years. 3 closed within the last 2 years. And so when you talk about the issue of infant mortality, and you talk about also maternal deaths, we are also in a hot spot where you have the most of both, but yet we don't have access to healthcare. And so the question that was raised, and we've continued to raise over the last couple of years, while the politicians debate over when and how much and where and what a hospital will offer, is that if there's a major health crisis, clearly we're going to be impacted as much, or impacted the most again. And enters COVID-19, and here we are seeing this scenario. And we have observed in cities all across this country where access to medical care, first of all, Black folks can't get health insurance, number one. Fortunately, in the district, we do have it, almost something similar to universal health care. But the point is, we don't have primary care physicians. We don't have a hospital. And that's an issue that we've been carrying. And because we are a predominantly Black, poor part of the city, people don't think we deserve it. And so, how we garner sort of a national outcry and looking at what access to healthcare means and how this virus has affected our communities, to me is one of those issues that we've looked at locally, but I think we need to take a look at nationally because COVID's going to come. I mean, COVID's here and it's going to go, and something else is coming next. Yeah. And we need to be prepared.
Absolutely. And before we go out to the Richmond Free Press with Gene Boone, I just wanted to make sure everyone, again, understands and knows that on Thursday at 1 o'clock, Dr. Chavis, we're going to have not 4, but actually 5 doctors, Dr. Leanne Webb, Dr. Cameron Webb, Dr. Ebony Hilton, Dr. Tazon Bell, and Dr. Roshonda Mitchell. So it should be a great, great panel.
And Dr. Webb and Dr. Ebony are also members of the NMPA Coronavirus Task Force. They have, and Gene, you should know, at the University of Virginia, you got these dynamic young millennial doctors. I mean, they are like on the case. They're not taking no prisoners. So I'm so pleased that we're going to have all 5 of them on Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern time for a live stream. It's going to be great. Yep.
Gene Boone, we would certainly like you to weigh in on the Black press. We've always taken a stand. Is it any different today?
No, it's even more important today than it ever has been. And again, we have to have our facts straight. We have to have our heads on right in terms of what's right and what's wrong. We have to be truth tellers for our readers, and that includes doing our homework and making sure that we say things that will affect our readership in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. For the publishers again, and of course, Dr. Chavis, we certainly would like for you to weigh in on this too. Are young people being engaged to participate in the Black press as readers and publishers?
Well, from my point of view, they are, and we have features, and we're on, all the platforms, social media platforms, and we make a conscious effort to try to make sure that we're speaking to millennials and others. We have a millennial mayor, so we have to follow him and make sure he's doing the right thing and speak to the people that put him in office. We didn't support him when he ran, but we support him because he's our mayor, and we have a very good relationship with City Hall. But at the same time, if there's something to be called out, we'll call it out. We have no hesitation about that.
Yeah, I know that Denise and other papers too, but Denise has The Bridge, which is targeted toward young ones. Denise, same question, and I know your answer, but in general, are we engaging these young people to participate as not just readers, not just writers, but publishers as well?
Yeah, I think we are. I have to say, my father got me involved in this business by making this my summer job every summer from the time I was 9 years old until, I grew up. If people know Marion Barry in this town, and they give him credit for the summer youth employment program. And every summer I would go and apply, and my father would say, "No, you're working here." So I didn't have a choice. And so I grew up and went to college and realized after working with my dad at the paper and going to Howard School of Communications and it being suggested to me that I needed to go try to get a job with some of these other, as you call them, mainstream newspapers. It made no sense to me because I had a newspaper. I would leave my class to learn how to be a journalist and run to the office every day to put out a newspaper. So, and so I did the same thing. I created a publication with the hopes that my sons would get interested. They didn't initially. So fortunately, we had some really great and forward-thinking young journalists who led the bridge, and we call it WI Bridge because one, again, it bridged neighborhoods, it bridges communities, it bridges racial groups because we have a very diverse millennial community here in Washington. And about 2 years ago, my son decided, hey, I'm interested. He jumped in. And so the bridge comes out once a month, and it is geared towards millennials. And he's been doing a great job, and he's got a team of folks. And what we found, it was another test. If we did stories on millennials in a print publication, would they read it? And of course, they see it first online, but when they know it's in print, they want copies. Because they got to send them home to mama and grandmama and everybody. I made it in the newspaper. I got my story out there. So print lives, and I'm very excited by as Ms. Boone said, the young staff that I have, because as this technology goes forward, I need people who can give me answers quickly, and not while I'm sitting there trying to figure it all out. So I think there is a future. I think that our schools of journalism need to be, taken to task to do more to encourage students to really consider doing internships and exploring the Black press. I think that what Dr. Chavis and the NMPA and General Motors did in coming up with that internship, Discover the Unexpected, where we got the cream of the crop of journalism students from around the country who not only received an exceptional experience during the 3 or 4 years that we were engaged in that program, but they also got $10,000 at the end of the summer that they could use to pursue their education. And some of those, I hired a couple once they graduated. And they looked forward to coming to the Informer. So I think that we are doing all that we can, and really it's out of necessity to make sure that we bring young folks into our businesses, and not only just as journalists, but as business executives selling advertising, circulation, IT, all of the areas that we have a growing need for.
Yeah. Dr. Chavis, like you wanted to weigh in there.
Well, I was going to let Fran speak. I just say, look, I'm very proud of our millennials. A lot of the publishers' families have young people in their families. They're beginning now to get into the business across the country. That's encouraging. You know, my own son is working with this group called BlackMillennialVoices.com. And recently, you know, we just interviewed Chuck D. This past week, we interviewed Ice Cube. So we're reaching out to hip hop generation millennials in a special way, and the response has been tremendous. Also, I just want to announce that on July the 8th and 9th, the NMPA is going to have our first virtual convention, July 8th, July 9th. And I want to focus on some of the things that the publishers have said here today. We'll be sending out information about the platform and take your suggestions about the viability and sustainability of the Black press, inclusive of our millennials. I've noticed on our websites, there's been about a 20% increase in traffic from millennials since the COVID-19. I think it's a understatement when some people say, well, young people don't want to read, they don't, you know, they just want a tweet, they just want 120 characters. That's not, no, they want in-depth information. The question is where do they go to find the in-depth information? And we have to make sure that we create portals for them to get our information, utilize our information. And I think all of our papers should have millennial interns, apprentices, and there's also foundation money out there that will help us financially sustain apprenticeships and mentorships for the next generation of freedom-fighting journalists.
Thanks, Dr. Chavis. I just wanted to point out to our readers that every Monday and every Wednesday at 1 p.m., you can see another group of our great publishers on this live broadcast. Fran, for our county news, I know you wanted to weigh in there. We are seeing so many comments here. Rich Davis says, I think exploring the Black press should be mandatory of all young journalists across our collegiate landscape here in the U.S. Black news, in my opinion, is American news. We put so much time into this president and the fiasco going on in the White House that we miss out on the real news. Fran?
Well, that's true, but I do want to say something about the youth piece and adding. I have a kids and teens page, and they'd add a piece plus, you know, or more. And I've had about 7 or 8 writers. Sometimes they come and go. It's been a few minutes since we've had them, but we still encourage them each week because, and the way I get them is I tell them, this will help you write your college papers. So many teachers are not helping the children prepare in today's world because we don't have as many counselors as we had when myself, Miss Boone, or Denise were in school to help the kids prepare for college. So when they can learn to write and we edit and correct them, they use that as an example. It's our job. You know, all of our children don't have mothers like Miss Boone, Denise, and myself. So it's our job to make them enjoy the world of journalism, but we help them be able to write those news-worthy and winning papers. And that's all I have to say.
Gene Boone, Richmond Free Press. Dr. Chavis mentioned the increase in millennials who are reading the Black press. What is the Richmond Free Press? What have you done out there? I know you guys do so much, but what have you done out there to continue that trend of encouraging the young ones to participate in the Black press?
Well, we have certainly increased and expanded our social media platform across the board. And like was said a few minutes ago, often we find that the curve is going up for readers of the free press online who are millennials. And that's a good thing. Once they see it online, they pick it up. We have very few, our percentage of newspapers being returned, as reported by our audit service, is very, very small. And again, we try to find interesting feature stories that will attract millennials. After all, it's the stories that and the take on the local news that makes us unique. There's the very conservative daily newspaper, the newspaper that championed segregation forever, and massive resistance was the name of the game for that, for the news leader in Times Dispatch. We came into that market. I mean, yeah, North Carolina has its own set of issues, but Richmond and Virginia definitely had. And so we even had people when we started in 1992 saying, Black people don't read. Why are you starting a newspaper? And well, hell, we've proved them wrong, because Black people do read, and Black people do write, and Black people do act. And after all, it's about educating our readership so that they will take a stand and take action. And that's, I mean, we're very much a newspaper that tries to encourage activism in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. Tracy Powell writes to us that over the weekend, the Minnesota Star Tribune reported on COVID-19, and they didn't talk to a single person in the community, the hotspot community, which is a Black community. So at minimum, they should reflect the voices of the communities that you report on. The Black newspapers do that. I guess it goes back to what we were talking about, Denise.
Yeah, I wanted to just jump in and say, because I think that's part of the millennial story too. I mean, mind you, once a millennial, always a millennial. So these millennials are getting old now. They're turning like 35, 40 years old. And of course, their values and interests are changing. They're beginning to have families, buy homes, settle into businesses. They're being impacted by this COVID, and they're running for office. So the Bridge this week comes out this week, and it's focusing on the millennials that are running for office in this upcoming election here in the District of Columbia. And they're also talking about the issues that millennials are concerned about as it relates to the presidential campaign. They want to see their faces. They want to hear their stories. And as long as, we include them in our coverage and take to heart what their issues or concerns are. I mean, I think that's how we build an audience. They are rising now in positions all over. And so they need to be acknowledged for that. And they're making decisions that affect our lives. And so, I mean, I think Tracy's right in talking about what happened in Minneapolis. That's the problem. That's what I said before. A lot of times people want to talk about us, but they don't want to talk to us, and they definitely don't want to hear from us. And so that's what we in the Black press do. We want to hear and tell the stories about the folks and the issues that impact our communities directly.
Yeah, Dr. Chavis, I want to go back to something that Gene Boone of Richmond Free Press commented on. she talked about how they don't want us to learn to read. They didn't want us to learn to write. You obviously went through all of that during the civil rights era, and it seems like we're in another civil rights era. Can you talk about that aspect of the importance of the Black press?
Well, I want to go back to something else also that happened in Virginia in the 1830s. It was called the Nat Turner Insurrection. And after the Nat Turner Insurrection in 1831, the state of Virginia, the state of North Carolina, the state of South Carolina, the state of Georgia, and the state of Alabama passed a law making it a felony to teach a Black person how to read or to write. A felony, not a misdemeanor. Why? This is prior to the Civil War, because they did not want Black people to read. They did not want Black people to count. They did not want Black people to have unity, because one of the prerequisites of having a pseudo ideology called white supremacy is contingent upon convincing people of color that they are inferior and that their institutions are superior to our institutions, those that we, despite the laws, despite the hardship, that we built for ourselves. And I think that, so when it comes to me, it shouldn't even ever be on the agenda of whether or not we're going to have the Black press or not. It shouldn't be on, that question should not be on the agenda whether or not we're going to have Black colleges or not, or Black churches. I keep talking about those three things: the press, the church, and the education. We have to strive for excellence. And I get all of the copies of the Black newspapers at the NMPA office every week. I mean, it's amazing. I see the excellence of the Black press. So I would like to say that it's not that you're going to find in the Black press a Black interpretation of the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Chicago Tribune. No, what you're going to find in the Black press is the authentic, truth-telling, news, cultural, striving for excellence. We have geniuses in our communities, all of our communities. And one of the unfortunate things that happens to Black America, even in 2020, we tend to underestimate our value because we are told that we should undervalue ourselves. We are socialized to feel that we are undervalue ourselves. And so I think what we have to restore within Black community, within Black America, is this aspiration to strive for excellence, this aspiration to not accept second fiddle, this aspiration not to wait for crumbs to fall off somebody else's table when we can build our own table, we can cook our own meals, raise our own crops, raise our own families. And I think you get that nuance every week from the Black press. Those are weekly. We have a Black Daily in New York. There's a new book out about Wilmington. In 1898, most people don't know, we had a Black Daily in 1898, published by Charles Manley. It was called the Wilmington Record. And when the white supremacists decided, and also William Manley was a Black Republican, incidentally. So the thing is, they ran him out of town, they burned down his building, and they had a celebration of it. If you go to Wilmington today, there's a park named Hugh McCrae Park, where the city of Wilmington celebrates the insurrectionists. They celebrate and memorialize the massacre of Black people to this day. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we cannot afford to. So to me, I don't want to overstate it, but sometimes I do engage in overstatement because sometimes we allow understatement. I believe that the Black press is sacred. I believe that the Black vote is sacred. I believe HBCUs are sacred. And why did I say that? is because our travail, our struggle is sacred. And we cannot afford to let people get us all excited about a heaven in another world when we're experiencing hell in this world. We need some heaven on earth. And for me, every week, I get a glimpse of heaven on earth through the Black press. Excuse my theological analogies.
You can't help it, Dr. Chambers, right? Terry Austin is enjoying the conversation. Danielle Pierre, well said, Denise. Michelle Evans Oliver, thank you, Gene Boone, for carrying on the African American legacy in Richmond. Before we wrap, I'm going to borrow one of Dr. Chavis's sayings and say, when I tell you who we have coming up on Wednesday, Lord have mercy. We have John Warren of the San Diego Voice, our chair, our distinguished chair, Karen Carter Richards of the Houston Forward Times, James Washington of the Dallas Weekly, and Jackie Hampton of the Mississippi Link. So we're looking forward to Wednesday at 1 p.m. to hear another great conversation with some distinguished publishers of the Black press. Fran Farah, County News, what are you guys working on this week that we should look forward to?
We're working on some local newsmakers in Charlotte, well, one in Charlotte and one in Rowan County, and then of course updates on COVID, updates on openings, and some dismal things that those that were not able to open up. That's causing a little problem, but all the Black ladies are really excited that the hairstylists are open.
Absolutely. Gene Boone, up in Richmond, the Free Press. What can we expect from you this week?
Well, we have a division of labor, and I have a managing editor, and she sets the news budget for the week, and the reporters do their job under her direction. However, having said that, let me say that we are certainly following up on our sheltering in place. Our governor has not lifted that for the Richmond community, and our numbers have not gone up. We're focusing on trying to stay alive and making sure that people wear their mask and social distance. That is paramount for our readers to be reminded of week after week after week. It is no joke, and yet there are certain segments of the community that seem to think that it is, or it is not to be taken seriously. So that's one of the major lead stories for next week, for this week now. Yes, we come out Thursday.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. Denise Rolock Barnes, Washington Informer. What's the big story coming out of the nation's capital this week?
That's supposed to be my question, Stacy. But as you know, it's COVID, and we are looking at the numbers here in the district. The mayor is hoping to be able to open the city up on its first stages this Friday. We'll see what happens, but we're going to be following that. And as you know, some of us who did, as Dr. Chavis, received these grants, we've now launched something called COVID Daily, which, you know, is a daily newsletter that we send out on coverage of what's happening in the District of Columbia. And you're talking about the doctors that you all are having that are coming together on Thursday. And Dr. Reed Tuckson, who is formerly the health director here in the District of Columbia, has launched something called the Black Coalition Against COVID. It's local. I thought it was national, but it's a local endeavor. So we'll be doing a piece on that. And as you know, we also launched, COVID had us very creative, but we launched something called Win TV, which airs every Friday at noon, and similar to what you're doing, but we actually just talk to people in the community who are in ways in which we're addressing this virus here in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and also looking to those businesses that are slowly reopening to try to give them support along with the nonprofits to give them some support so that they can recoup the dollars that they've lost, over the last several months since they've been closed. But so we're highlighting those businesses not only in the paper but also on the show. So that's there's more, but that's it in a nutshell.
And before I go to our president and CEO, we are at NNPA, the Black Press USA, and the Newswire. We have several things in the hopper, as they say, including one story about the popularity of Barack Obama. And some are tying it to the unpopularity, if that's a word, of President Trump. So we'll see how that shakes out. But Dr. Chavis, just in a couple of minutes that we have remaining, can you kind of take us behind the scenes a little bit of what's going on at NNPA? I know you've been gone without sleep many a nights trying to keep things afloat. Can you kind of give us and the publishers and our viewers what's going on at NNPA?
Well, thank you very much. I'm very proud of the staff of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. We're working virtually. I've been on lockdown here in Washington, D.C. for the last 8 weeks. I have not been on a train. I have not been on a plane. But we've kept the office open. All the staff are working virtually. I think one of the things that COVID has forced us to do is to utilize technology so that we can get the mission accomplished. We've sold advertising during this period.
Wow.
I announced that we're seriously going to hold the DNC and RNC accountable in their spending dollars. Because of the COVID-19, the U.S. Census may now expand the time for the census because it wasn't able to knock on doors. So we are also renegotiating with the United States Census to see if we can get some additional census advice for our member publishers. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're preparing now for our first national convention that will be done virtually, July 8th and July 9th. And so I think these are exciting times. I want to thank Gene Boone. I want to thank Denise Willott Bonds. I want to thank Fran Farrell. I want to thank all of the publishers. And thank you, Stacy. I think every week I hear feedback from a lot of our publishers. This is a great methodology, a great forum to have our publishers on. When we say we're the National Association, a National Newspaper Publishers Association, people say, well, what do you do? And so there's nothing like hearing from the publishers themselves. I'm very proud of the Black Press. I'm very proud of all of our publishers. And I see us, making some progress, even amidst this awful times. I do want to also just close with this. The coronavirus is still a death-threatening, death reality for too many of our people. We're only 14% of the population, but in some states we're 30, 40, in some places 50% of the fatalities. So we can't let our guard down. We can't, as Malcolm would say, we can't go for the okie doke and go back and act like the virus is not there, because we're going to be the ones winding up suffering for that. And there's another myth that the virus is only for people over 60. That is not true. We've had young people in Black America to die. We've had children to die. We've had middle-aged people. We have all ages. So, and the thing is, you can be asymptomatic. That means you won't have the symptoms. You don't even know you have it. But because you're asymptomatic, and if you have it, you can get somebody else who's not asymptomatic, you can give them the disease. That's why everybody should wear a mask. We should wash our hands, and we should maintain social distancing. It's in our interest, because you can gain the whole world, but if you lose your health, you don't have anything. The greatest wealth is your health. So let us all please be our brothers and our sisters keepers. I'm also a man of prayer. I pray for all of us, pray for the Black press, pray for our communities, our families, our loved ones. But I'm also optimistic. I think seeing this show, seeing this program for the last weeks, Stacey, has been re-encouraging, for the Black press. And so I wish you all well, and thank you very much for participating.
Well, thank you all, Fran Farrar of the County News, Gene Boone, Richmond Free Press, Denise Roloff Barnes of the Washington Informer, and of course, our President and CEO, Dr. Benjamin Chavis Jr. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, tomorrow, Am I Black Enough? Live stream with Nasinga Burton. She's going to discuss that controversial Joe Biden comment live right here at noon. And of course, Wednesday, we have our chair, Karen Carter Richards, is going to be among the publishers who join us on Wednesday. So stay tuned, stay safe, stay well. This has been the Black Press of America, the NNPA, which is celebrating 80 years, and the Black Press of America, 193 years. Everybody, enjoy your day.
Thank you, Stacey. You too.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, my sisters.
Thank you.